Thank you for joining the workshop. I tried to make it a little bit workshop style. Let's see how we get through this. And thanks for attending. Yeah, I know it's like 4 o'clock. I think it's the last session, isn't it? So long day, also for ourselves. So let's get through this. I'm not sure whether we will need all 40 minutes. Let's just see how far we get. But you will get like an idea, right, what the agenda is. A few more people coming. You're right on time. Don't worry. Yeah, no worries. Let's see. So my name is Oskar. I'm RVP for FullStory. I basically started in April, which doesn't mean that FullStory is a company started in April. We are a little older, founded 2014. By now over 600 people, but in Germany or the German-speaking territory, so DACH, we are 10 people, servicing with marketing, customer success, partner management for this region. So we have a local team, and now trying to give you a little bit more an outlier into the agenda. So this is what we will be speaking about. So firstly, some stats. I mean, every good presentation starts with some stats. Then we will go into measurements of mobile. So when you're new or not, and maybe you're like in the maturity of getting more into mobile, then I did prepare some static stats or measurements that you should be looking at. But then we will go into what no one tells you about mobile apps, why it's actually hard to measure mobile and what the difficulties are. I think the main part we will be around as you got into the what, so as you understood your measurements, how do you now understand what's behind the measurements? So understanding the why, and if we have a little bit more time, this is a little bit more text heavy. We will speak about growth strategies for mobile apps. This is a white paper, downloadable. I will provide the link. This is something that we did with Yodel Mobile that you're all aware of. So a little bit of best practices in how to get started. Right? Perfect. So before we start, I just would like to get like a feeling around this room who is here. So if you can just hand raise. So who is an app developer or in app development? Yeah, a little bit. Okay. What else do we have? App marketing, UX, UI. A little bit of everyone. Product managers. Okay, so everything. Yeah, thanks. It's just like, okay, what do you want me to concentrate on? How many apps do you have on your mobile device, roughly? It's like 10, 20, 30? A lot. TikTok and the others, right? WhatsApp, yeah. Have you had any bad experiences with any mobile apps that you maybe never, right? Never. Yeah, you had bad experiences. What did you do afterwards? Uninstalled.
Usually if it's just crashing anything, I start to reopen it. But if it just fails multiple times, then I will install it.
Yeah. Anyone else? Same experiences? Yeah.
Actually, what I have is some of the mobile games, and then straight share all the data. If nothing just cannot open it, then it's automatically deleted from my device.
Okay. So when you uninstalled or deleted or deinstalled your apps, did you complain? Did you leave comments? Bad rating? Probably not. And this is something same what Salesforce says. Salesforce says 91% of unhappy users will leave without complaining. Let's just keep this for now as it is. As I promised, I also provided some stats around general mobile, right? And also mobile ads. But when we take a look into the world that we are facing, 52% of all internet traffic is coming from a mobile device. And this is just nowadays the importance, and probably all of you know. If you go a little bit further down at the last 6 months, 55% of consumers say that they've been frustrated or struggling with completing an online transaction. And this is lost money. Right? 55% of customers are unlikely to return to a site or app after the experience after they experienced a struggle or frustration. 54% of consumers said they trust a brand less after having a bad experience. Okay, now we can decide. Now we can discuss what a bad experience is, right? I mean, there's like from to, but generally, just as a stats, I think this is like very, very important what it outlines. And 75% of respondents are likely to leave an app without completing their intended action due to having a frustrating experience. So user experience on mobile web, or in this case on native app, super, super important. And then, of course, depending on what kind of app it is, whether it's an e-commerce or gaming or any whatsoever, providing a good and satisfying user experience, this is crucial. Let's go a little bit into more the basics of what to measure to understand user engagement and conversions. I put this into 3 buckets. So first we are speaking about engagement. And this the engagement piece is about understanding how users are coming to your app, what they're doing in the app, and also the quality of the experience inside the app. Second one is conversion. And this is like the understanding of the financial background. And everything around, how to convert actually users into customers, depending on the app that you have. And then there's like performance. Performance has nothing to do with conversion in that case on the financial backgrounds. The performance is based on the app performance, right? Understanding app responsiveness, stability, and surely this has an impact on the other 2. Let's just go through each of these one by one. So, measuring a native app, make sure you have the following in place. Especially when you get started, or you already have an app, but you still live in a black box. Yes, it does seem obvious, right? But user volume. So how many people do you have on your app? I think this is like very, very important. But this is like coming actually towards the basics. Also the session volume. How often are they using your app? What's the retention? Then there's the NPS. How happy are they? So this is like coming along with customer satisfaction surveys that you run. User acquisition channels. How did they find you? What are the sources where they're coming from, where they found you? But also content support when they leave a feedback. What do they have to say? And this is like something that you can have either in voice or providing a statement. And this would actually already give you like a good understanding around the engagement of your app. Anything missing? I think it does cover a lot generally around the understanding. Let's go into the conversions. Conversion, and this is all around inside of your app, right? And this is not necessarily the ending point of your customer journeys. It can also be like the starting point of your customer journeys, especially when we think about cross-device. I'm this kind of person, when I'm in the train or when I'm in the bus, very often I do research on my mobile app maybe, but then transactioning on web or vice versa. But what you really would like to understand around conversions is the user or customer lifetime value. So what do you earn from each user? So once you acquired a user, what's the expected value that you will gain? Also, when you're investing into new channels, you would also like to understand cost per acquisition. So what did we have to do, or what did we have to spend to get them? Another important one, as I think, is average order and conversion value. How much is each purchase worth? Total conversions. How many people are spending money on your app? And then again, depending, right, what the intention and your promise of the app is. But also, what's the conversion rate? And what's the conversion rate and the baseline conversion rate that will give you good outliers, but also funnels. how efficient is their experience. So where do you lose the people on the way when they interact with your app? And especially when you made like a value promise to them to get them towards the app, are you delivering the promise, and where underway are you losing them? Let's go to the third one, the performance. This is a quick one. Application response time. So how fast is the app, right? You don't want to have like any sticky pages. That seems technical, but also has like a very deep psychological effect. Especially based on my experience, I very often face this when I'm in the car, right? And I try to swap different pages, responsiveness or stickiness lags. Then there is screen rendering times. So how fast is it? Memory. This was something that you said, right? Battery. How much data is always going? What's the battery satisfaction that you have? Sacrifice actually. And this is often like a factor why, actually one of the most important factor why apps get deinstalled. And app crashes. How consistent is your app? An app crash is limited something like in the real world, it's like going into like a department store, wanted to buy something, and the customer service person freezes and doesn't do anything. This is like the equivalent. So I think these were the baselines. I know it is very basic, but let's just take it from there. What no one tells you, mobile is tricky. So when we speak about instrumenting or measuring web, this is always easy, right? Very often you just put like a script on your web page. You tag different elements that you would like to understand. Mobile is different. Why? You have like infinitive possibilities. Right? Just if you look, you have like Apple, you have Android, then you have different frameworks. There's like Swift, there's Objective-C, there's Java, Kotlin, and some others. Let's also think about when you're on a desktop or web, very often you are online. With mobile apps, might be different, especially me, like traveling in trains and buses, or even going from Hamburg to Berlin. It's not the easiest. So there's like offline. So this again, how are you leveraging this? And also in terms of measurement, are you able to measure this? And phones have data limits, right? When it comes to both ways, either sending out or data which is stored on your mobile. Privacy implications. And I think this is like where Apple is like very careful around what measurements or what information are shared out of your mobile internally and this is like a requirement that they put on you before putting this one into the App Store. So everything around privacy, I think, is something to really look at. But it also has more challenges which actually go into ethical challenges. So really understanding, and as privacy has become the top item on everyone's agenda, generally it's all about security. And as you probably know, the Apple commercial that they say there's today more data on your mobile phone than probably at your home. Also, keep data actionable. So whatever you measure or whatever insights you get, make them actionable. Cross-device. I mean, as I explained before, user journeys across multiple devices. So you want to understand what I said before, like where did they research, where did they end, or the other way around. Do you have possibilities today or thinking about possibilities? Are you actually empowering users to do that or not? Tech blindness. This is like especially something when you think around, what you would like to measure, thinking beforehand, because you would need to build this into your mobile app, the SDK. So nothing is retroactive, and it used to be that you get into, especially in measurements, and when it comes to customer experience, this is like something that you definitely would like to look at. Limiting also the number of SDKs. because this actually explodes and makes your mobile app bigger, but also personalization. Today, you find technologies that are able to personalize, but then it's like very, very siloed because every single device has like a different view. So this is like something to take into considerations. So we talked about the basics, and it was very basic, I need to admit. But think about now, we understood the what, we understood app performance, we understood measurements in terms of engagements, conversions, but how do you get from the what to the why? And this is something that I would like to show you within a very, very small demo. So, because revealing the why behind the measurements and bad ad experiences, you must unlock additional functionalities. And that's only provided by so-called digital experience intelligence platform. And I would like to give you today a outlook to show you how a digital experience intelligence platform works. But before we do, these are things to consider. Cohort segmentation. So DXI platforms, they do have the possibility to understand different audiences that are affecting your KPIs. Cross-device source and exit. So as I said before, right, it's a little more detailed measurement, mostly around journey paths. So did they start on desktop and end on mobile or vice versa? Journey path, what are they taking underneath until they maybe converted or became a lead? Session replay. Who has had experiences with session replay in mobile apps? Does everyone understand what a session replay can provide to you in native apps? I will give you an example. Friction heuristics. So what are search patterns? And especially when it comes to signals, frustration signals, like error clicks or dead clicks, rage clicks. I mean, a rage click is like being in the elevator and just hitting the button very, very often. Elevator's not coming quicker just due to that, but it's like it's a frustration signal. But also support request associations. So what's the sentiment? What's the trend of people when they interact and when they leave a feedback? And this is definitely something that I would like to show you. So let's get a little more practical. This is a digital experience intelligence platform. And what this digital experience intelligence platform provides are 3 layers. The top layer is quantitative data. So which means this is data aggregated from all visits of the mobile apps. So not put down on an individual, but taking actually the aggregation of all. Then we have the second layer, and the second layer is qualitative insights or qualitative analytics, which means a single user session that you will be able to watch, and we will have an example. And the third layer is professional debugging. And this is like something to collaborate internally in case you identify something that needs to be changed in the platform. How does a DXI do it? Within, and you can see it here within the filters, this DXI, so FullStory, is able to do this on web app, but also for native mobiles, and everything is included in one platform. Within web, it's just a single script that you would need to put into the tag manager. No additional tagging is necessary. With the mobile apps, it's all around implementing an SDK, and that's it. What FullStory does, it's then auto capture, which means as soon as a person opens the app or web, at that time, all user interactions will be collected, structured, and indexed, being able to aggregate or make them searchable. It's very, very similar to what Google does with the internet. They are indexing the internet, and FullStory does the same with user behavior. Let me give you some examples. So what you see here, and this is the first layer that I talked about, this is the quantitative side, so the macro perspective or the aggregated side. And what this one gives me out of the box is something like that. I say, okay, let me show me a segment, show me an audience, and there's like no filter put. So and I said, okay, there's an audience within the last 30 days, and everyone who used the native app. So what analytics does it give? And this should actually include all DXI platforms that do it that way. First of all, there are real sessions that you would be able to watch. Let's watch one just in a second. But it also gives you analytics around all the different measurements that we talked before. In addition, with user trends, segment health, what are top users, so recurring users coming back. But it also gives you insight about frustrated sessions. So what is a frustrated session? It could be something like an error click. So for example, where the function that was coded did not work or caused an error. There's something like rage clicks, the elevator click that we talked before. And there's also something like a dead click. So users within the app click somewhere where it was actually not meant to click. So why did they click? And this is also like a signal of a frustration or frustration signal, because there must be a reason why every single time 30% of your users are clicking on a picture because they're expecting something and nothing is happening. I will just not go further down. There's like way more. But let's imagine that we say, okay, we have our segment and we say, okay, all users, and this is just my demo account. But within my demo account, within the last 30 days, I have 83 users. But they generated 1,015 events, whatever an event is. It's a movement, it's a click, it's a pinch to zoom, everything. So let's say I would like to identify and say, okay, very interesting. Within my 84 or within my users in the last 30 days, I had 25 people who experienced an error on my app. So what I can do, I can add them to search. And the whole dashboard is now customized just to this error click, which provides you with additional information, still on an aggregated side. So, and sorry for the resolution, by the way. It's very big, but it also gives you like a screen resolution breakdown. What mobile device were the users having? What the screen size, and so on and so forth. So it already provides you with, hey, these could be something why it's not working. But what it also does, and this now gets into the second layer, quantitative data is always connected with qualitative data. So macro data is always connected to session replays of every single user. And it's not a replay like watching like a Netflix, like a movie. It's a recreation of the user experience the user had in the app. And this was done by the index data that the session was recreated. Why do we do that way? I mean, just think about, we would record every single user, how much data would actually be leaving the device or vice versa. Let's just have a look into one of these where we said, okay, there's a user who had an error on the purchase button, in that case, how it looks. Let me just take this one. Okay, this is now tricky because my button here. Okay, let me just go through this once and then you see it. Okay, maybe this was a little fast. So what actually now happened is you see the mobile app and you see lots of information, or maybe you don't see lots of information. But what you see is, or what you saw is, there was a person who clicked on the purchase button and the information around the purchase button was taken actually out of the index. So this is why we knew it's called index, why it's called purchase. So one clicked on purchase and it said there's an invalid zip code. It must be 5-digit. Okay, now it's not a functional breakdown. It's just based on the user experience. But let me just go one step back. This session is roughly is about 1 minute and 30. But what happened as I said, hey, I just would like to understand this error, it already jumped 5 seconds before the event occurred, which means I think it was here somewhere. Let me just click the play button again, and then you see it. So information are put in, it's going down to the side, okay, it's not going further, then there's the click on the purchase button. Did everyone see it? So what everyone does, what FullStory does as well, is, as you can see here, all the information, it is masked. Why? Because it's a private by default approach. And private by default means all information that you are able to put in or sensitive data, FullStory does not take from the first place. Why? Because we say this kind of data should never, never, ever leave the device of a user. Think about when talking about session replay tools, there are tools that do it differently, right? Sometimes tools, they take and they record a session, put it over onto a server, and then remasking, but then it's already happened, right? Information left a user's device. So what FullStory does, it's masking information, so typed in information, but it's totally excluding. So you could not even see that someone typed something. It's totally excluded with payment information. And this is like something within the onboarding process that you can decide what kind of data you only would like to be masked, what kind of data you would like to see. Let's say you have a search field because you are looking for items in maybe your e-commerce shop. Of course you would like to see this. It is not sensitive. You could unmask this and only then it's leaving the device. But putting in like a name or like a street address, it is okay. Just seeing the mask letter that an action is happening. Payment information is absolutely no-go. So let's say, to recap, we saw aggregated data. We saw, hey, there were like frustration happened. There were error clicks. We identified now the error click based on an example. And what are we doing now? Now we are able to go into the third layer. And the third layer, and this is now really challenging a little. Let me just try to Okay, let me just try to make this screen a little smaller. Oh, okay, it went bigger, right? Okay, now. Yeah, okay. Okay, maybe not. A little bit. How can I get this up? Okay, see, it's not the best user experience. Also for you for this presentation here. It doesn't matter. I will show you. I will tell you in theory. So, third layer. Somewhere here is a button, which is called Note and Share. You are able to click on this button, Note and Share, and leave a message. What happens to the message? The message is now attached to, and here you see actually the back end. What is the information that is collected? So every single movement, every single action is indexed. And here's the error that we had. So the notes and share are now attached to the click. And what you could do now, out of FullStory, create a Jira ticket or a Zendesk or put it into Microsoft Teams and create a ticket with all the information either a product manager would need or an engineer with information around there's a session, there's a timestamp, this is my node I put next to this, and here's the code that you need to fix to get this problem solved. In that case, this would be probably more something for the product manager, less for the engineer. If it were like a functional error, this is like, providing information on a silver tablet. Does it make sense? Everyone saw the 3 different dimensions: macro data, qualitative data, and the professional debugging. As I said, everything is searchable. As all the information are indexed, we now have the possibility even to go further. And going further means, for example, let's take a look how customers, users navigate through the app. Let's understand the journey. Let me just filter and take, as you can see, this is like a demo account, but let's take my user journey in one of my mobile apps. And this is based on the API events, based on custom events that a user had. So here, for example, you can identify how did they navigate through my app. Were there already any frictions that you would be able to identify here? But what you also are able to identify is what are the drop-offs. So you could say, okay, you would like to start somewhere with like a certain ending point, or you could flip it and say, okay, your ending point is actually the most important. So maybe there's a checkout. How are people navigating towards the checking endpoint? What you could also do is say, okay, this is like an interesting, okay, someone navigated to cart, then went to the checkout, then navigated back again to a check. I don't understand. We have again quantitative data. Now I say, okay, this is like a very interesting funnel I would like to identify. Remember, every single time, quantitative data is always attached to qualitative data, so you would be able to actually watch this session of this navigation. Or you say, hey, this is like so interesting to me, I would like to understand why there are like any drop-offs. It could be, like a form file where they put their user information in there. It could be anything. It's just an identified funnel. This one here, just put more into the aspect of where are the drop-offs. And you can actually now go in here and trying to identify why did this actually happen. Why are people experiencing here a drop-off of my funnel? So you could identify people from different cities, different iOS, different screen resolutions and whatsoever. Last but not least, dashboards. Everything that I showed you before in terms of measuring or trying to measure user engagements on your website with the statics around engagement, conversions, and performance, of course, this is something that you will be able to put into a digital experience intelligence platform as well. Any questions? Okay. Great. Let's then jump back. So we saw a little bit and we learned how to marry the what and why for the maximum impact of your understanding of customer experience. And it's actually always a funnel, actually always a circle. So the quicker you are actually accelerating the circle of finding and measure and having like friction signals provided to you with the understanding and taking the action with the debugging, the more you have a benefit also in terms of competitive apps in the competitive environment. So screens capture something to look at, fidelity, trying to understand, okay, how are these those session replays, how are the replays provided? Is it like a real recording, or is it like coming out of an index? The private by default, when is information captured, and what about the privacy concerns? When is it masked? Then SDK, this is something that I mentioned before, especially when it comes to breakups. I'm not always online with my mobile phone, for example. Is there like a way to cache information to still being able to provide a replay? And a frame first approach, it's about the performance, how much data is actually going into the index, and when is it indexed, just not to slowing down the app performance. This is something that I will not go through with you now. Happy to share this presentation. I think this presentation will be shared, but these are like different ways how session replay tools interact, right? Like, or how you actually measure everything for your mobile app. So basic mobile analytics, there's the screen recording, there's like tagless analytics, and then there's like a DXI solution, and everyone has its pros and cons, but you need to identify which is the right one for you. I would definitely, for the tagless analytics and screen recording, call out a privacy concern. But then it's again up to you, right, what findings you need to get. I don't know whether I ask, is anyone already using today a session replay tool? Is that new? Just in general, have you ever seen that something like this is possible? Okay. Talking about GDPR and private data and so on and so forth. As I mentioned, it's like absolutely GDPR conform, as sensitive data is never leaving the device of a user, but we can talk about this later on. All right. This is now a chapter that I will go through very, very quickly as we have like 2 minutes left. Thanks God, right? But how to get started. So this is like a white paper that we did with Yodel Mobile. Again, happy to share. Just to give you like an understanding what it has. It's all about data democracy, right? How to bring different data together, why you should actually bring also different departments together where both are working toward the same goals. Because on the one side, right, you don't want your paid acquisition team, be working on optimizing subscriptions, right? Whether on the other side, product team is like focusing on increasing user lifetime value, which is like 2 different topics where at the end of the day, probably the product team is leveraged, hey, you are working wrong because customer lifetime value is going down as subscriptions are going up. Anyway, right? This is like something that you would like to identify. And we put with Yodel, we put together a step-by-step instruction how to get into this. Second is the customer journey mapping, something that I laid out. How are you today measuring the path across your app? I will not go through this. Identifying customer pain points, something that I discussed, frustration signals. There are like way more frustration signals that I mentioned. Also, the pinch to zoom is a frustration signal. Right? Hey, I cannot read because the letters are. Is there like something that you can put in per default? Are people seeing different elements that you wanted them to see? This is like something that you would also like to measure and to identify. Then leaks in the adoption or revenue funnel. Where are they dropping off? But not on the quantitative side, where, but also why are they dropping off? And this is like something where it will help you. And last but not least, upsell strategies. I think there are like 9 upsell strategies, but as said, happy to share this presentation, and I would call it a finish. Thank you.